Thanks for having me. I'm Ben Fetters. I've been sharing in the community for a while, I guess. Technically, I have a YouTube channel that's like 5 years old. So if you ever want to laugh at some really old, terrible videos, you can look at my YouTube channel. But I now have newer videos on there too. But anyway, so just a little bit about me since this is my first time sharing here. I actually work um, as part of two different companies. So the first one is Sovereign SP. We're a Microsoft consulting company. We do a lot with SharePoint, Power Platform, and SharePoint framework things. And then I also have my own training company. So it's called Peak Power Apps. That's my training company that I have. A lot of the tips and things that I share are actually on LinkedIn, believe it or not. LinkedIn is an interesting world, but maybe you've seen the Lego version of me right there that are in my LinkedIn post. It's pretty fun. So, last few little details. I'm notorious for talking too long, so I'm watching my time to make sure I do not take too long. Um, I got into the Power Platform during college, actually, and I never thought I would be in IT. I never thought I would go down that route, but I ended up doing business administration, and I got into Six Sigma stuff. Six Sigma stuff. There's a lot of stuff with Six Sigma, and process improvement and improving efficiencies and things like that, right? And so I really, really loved that. And during that time is when I also got into the Power Platform, and so those two worlds just kind of combined, and I just loved it so much, and I've been here ever since. Last little things is I love Legos. As you can see, I have a Lego version of myself. I'm hoping one day the Lego company will see me and say, "Oh, let's give Ben his very own Lego piece," because that would be like the coolest thing ever. So maybe one day that'll happen. And lastly, I write middle grade fantasy sci-fi books. So that's the complete opposite of this world, right? And it's actually really nice to have a hobby that's like the complete opposite of my job. So let's get into the demo. I'm really excited to share this tip here. And like David was saying, I am sharing about creating a comment section using JSON. And the whole idea around this is lots of times when we're creating applications, we need to have a child list. We need to have sub items, right? So for example, with my approval app here for purchase requisitions, we have some expense items that are stored in a separate list, but we also want to track what are all the comments that people are adding as this item is being approved. And rather than storing all those comments in a separate table or a separate list that we then need to keep track of, we're actually just storing that collection of comments as JSON data, and that JSON is being stored in just a multi-line text field in our data source, which in this case is SharePoint. And then we're grabbing that JSON data and pulling it back into our app, into a collection to display. So I thought I'd give a little rundown of that. And let me just show an example of how this is working. First, let me turn off I have a space heater on and it is way too hot right now, so I'm gonna turn that off. Okay, so let me show a little example of this. I'll click on my requisition right here, and I've got a little tabbed form that's pretty basic. And over here, I have my comments. So here's all my little comments. The screen is zoomed in, so it looks like it's kind of really zoomed in. There's not a lot of space here, but here's my little comment section. Here's me adding some comments at a certain time, testing things out. And if I want to add another comment, I could say, hey, here's another comment, and click on add comment, and there it shows up right here. And then when I click save, that's saving it back into SharePoint. And so if I go over here and look at our SharePoint data, here is our list, our purchase requisitions list. And here's just I like to say JSON at the end of it so that people know, hey, this field has to do with JSON. And it's basically just a multi-line text field, and here is all the JSON data. If you're new to JSON, right, JSON sounds kind of scary if you're not a developer. And I was not a developer, and learning it was kind of scary. But how I think of it is it's basically just a way of packaging up the data in an organized and neat way so that tools like Power Apps can then interpret the data as an actual table, for example. So instead of Power Apps just looking at all this text and just looking at it as text, storing it in JSON allows us to use some cool formulas that can then interpret all of this information as an actual table. And it looks really similar when you're building Canvas apps, right? It looks super similar. We have like the straight bracket here and the straight bracket right here to end off our table of data. And then here we've got our curly brackets. Here's our little comment item right here. We've got a comment field, testing comment, right, date time field, and so on. And so that's basically the idea of JSON and how this is all working. So now let me show you the actual code of how we're saving the JSON and then bringing it back into the app, or bringing it back into our collection to display. So I'll head over back to our app here. And the first thing I'll show is actually, if we click on an item, let's go to our little comment section. So the first thing I'll show is our add comment button. The really awesome thing about this method is once you have the JSON like converted into a table and into a collection, it's just a collection. So when you're actually first creating it, when I do this, I usually just create a collection first. And so how I did this is I'd have a button that adds a comment to a collection called collection comments, and the name is just the user's full name. The date and time is now, and the comment is just whatever they put in this text box. And you could make this more complicated, right? You could add more fields or whatever you need to do, right? In the end, it's just a collection, which we've worked with a lot usually. And that's what I'm displaying in this gallery right here is just the collection comments. So the JSON comes into play when I'm saving it. So the first thing I need to do is actually go to my settings, and I'll go to updates right here. And if you just search JSON, we do need to use some cool formulas in here like parse JSON that'll help us with this method. And so just turn on this right here. It's technically still in the experimental stage though, just so you know. And now when we save our data, so I like to use patch to save data. I sometimes talk to people about, them using mostly the form control or mostly patch. And I think at the next community conference, we need to have t-shirts that say team patch and team form control, and we can all battle it out and the winner can get some type of prize. Anyways, so I love having that conversation with people. It's pretty fun. But so here's my patch when I'm actually saving the purchase requisition item, right? So this is just the main requisition item that I'm saving. Here's some of my other fields. And when I'm saving the comments, I have my comments JSON field. That, remember, is just a multi-line text field. And all I do, it's the easiest thing probably out of this whole method, is just use the JSON formula and put the collection comments inside. So when I save this, this is the JSON is what's converting that collection into that JSON format. So if we go back to SharePoint, this is the collection being saved as JSON. So it's pretty awesome. And now, if I can get this guy to come back up here. There we go. Now when I want to, now I've saved the collection, right? So we've created the collection, now I've saved it. Now what happens when I click on an item and I want to actually bring that back into this collection and view those comments that I've then saved. So I'll come back here And now let's just look at the last piece of this puzzle. And we'll click on our button right here. So this is where it's slightly more complicated. It's still not too complicated, but what I'm doing is I first set a variable to the selected item. So that's just our requisition item that the user has selected. And then I'm clearing out the collection. So clear collect, and I'm creating it again. So I want to clear out whatever comments I was just looking at, right? Whatever the user had entered and everything, right? So I'm clearing out the comments and collecting the new comments for the selected item. And what I'm doing is I'm using a for all, and I'm looping through all of the JSON data. And for each of those items in the JSON data, I am creating an item in the collection. And it looks exactly like, I need to make it look exactly like our collection when we were adding a comment, right? So I have to have a name field, a date and time, and a comment field. So let me explain this part right here. So this is the kind of neat part, is to get Power Apps to view that field as a actual table of data. I have to use the parse JSON function. And so what that's doing is saying, hey, instead of viewing this field right here as text, so if I highlight this field, you can see the data type is text, the parse JSON will then say, hey, actually what's inside of here is JSON, so go ahead and figure out what that is. And I do need to, or Power Apps is, it's kind of interesting with how it does this. So it is able to interpret the JSON data, but it won't exactly be able to figure out like what all the field names are and the field types, right? So it's not going to help you out when you're actually adding these items into the collection. So for example, with this name field right here, um, I do use, this is really helpful. I use this all the time. It's like my favorite thing. But you can, when we do this, when we do the parse JSON, we can use as, and then I do JSON. And what this does is basically tells Power Apps, hey, whenever I'm referring to an item in this JSON table right here, I want it to be called JSON, which I just did that to be fun because it's kind of nice to have fun sometimes. And so that helps me to then identify, hey, I'm getting an item out of the JSON. So I want to do JSON. And then when I do a period, it's not helping me out at all. So this is where I need to just say, hey, I know there's a field in the JSON and I know it's called name. And if I left it like this, Power Apps will be able to figure out, oh yeah, there is a field in the JSON called name, and it will still work. It almost looks like it's not going to work because it's not like hinting at you like, hey, here's all your possible fields available like it normally does, right? So I just type that out. And the other thing I need to do that you've noticed probably is I need to also specify what type of data this is. So instead of just leaving it like this, I need to say, hey, this name field is text. So I just do the text around like that. If I had a number, I would use the value formula. And for date and time, I can use the date and time value formula to convert that into a date and time value. If it's just a date, I can just do date value. And that is pretty much it. So once I click on that item, it clears out the collection and pulls in that JSON back into that collection comments. And then I'm just viewing that collection of comments, right? So once I click on this item, here's our comments right here. Can go back here, click on another item, add another comment, one more comment, and hit save, and there you go. So the last thought I'll share here, I think I have a couple minutes left or a minute left, is this is a comment section, right? But this same idea you can use for lots of different things. So you could use it for an approval history, maybe. There's anytime where you need to save a table of data and you don't need to have a separate list for it, right? So if I click on this item, I actually have a separate list called requisition items, and these actually are separate items in a separate table. And sometimes you need to do that. But for this instance, it was really nice to just say, hey, we've got some comments. These need to be stored in a table. Let's just keep them in some JSON. And so it's a really helpful tool or method to use. But thank you guys so much.